Hello guys and welcome to the first instalment of the FPL Fantasy League. Obviously we were doing the Euro League, throughout the full duration of the time. We're building up to it. So and we obviously enjoyed it. Myself, Alexei, Ahmed, we were really enjoying it. We brought some different guys on and we got involved. By making our own league, went down very well. Obviously there's a lot of people who entered the league. I actually, finished sixth in the league, which wasn't bad. However, I'm obviously joined with an expert here, FPLPhillips. Nice to meet you, mate.
Nice to meet you. My name's Eddie, or FPLPhillips. And yeah, I do a bit of a channel. I started based on Euro Fantasy, but I'm continuing over to FPL, which we're going to be looking at today. And yeah, for sure, if you're interested in that kind of thing, go and check it out. Link will probably be in the description for that.
Yeah, obviously you're the expert in this, so I'm looking at you, and I'm hoping that you can help me out with my team, because obviously I put down, I kind of, my first draft, it's not amazing, it's obviously nowhere near the finished article.
Sure.
We don't know exactly who's starting yet.
Yep.
However, I think I've got quite a good basis so far, so we're just going to get straight into it, mate. If you're ready to do so. And we can start off with the keeper. So I'll just tell you quickly my reasoning behind picking Robert Sanchez in goals. Personally, I think I had a very good season last year. He got 10 clean sheets. But quite a no disrespect to Brighton, but not one of the top teams in the league. What I can remember, I'm sure they've not got a hard run of fixtures at the start of the season. So I'm looking at Robert Sanchez to hopefully get a couple of clean sheets, get the saves in as well. And at the end of the day, he's a 4.5 million keeper, so I can't really look past that. I don't know about you, mate, but 5 million, 5.5 million, look at your Nick Popes, keepers like that. I just don't see the point of it.
No, I completely agree with you, to be honest. Sanchez has been in my first draft. I don't know if you've seen that on my channel, but I'm a very big fan of the 4.5 goalkeeper going in, especially at the start of the season. Last season it was Martinez, and that worked out very well for me. This season I'm looking definitely at Robert Sanchez, and I've done quite a bit of research into the stats surrounding it. There's only 3 keepers 5.5 or below that top Robert Sanchez in terms of predicted points, and those are Leno, Lloris, and Schmeichel. And even so, only Leno is still only 1.8 points ahead in terms of predicted points for the first 6 game weeks, which is a long time. And so if you want to go for a keeper, I think Sanchez is for sure the way to go. He's the only one anywhere near the kind of high 24s in terms of predicted points for the first 6 game weeks. There's only Dubravka and Bachmann at that price who are similar to him, and I wouldn't really pick going for Newcastle. I'm very uncertain of how their defence is going to turn out. Same thing with Watford. You just don't. It's really hard to back a predicted team going in. But Brighton have looked very good. They're not conceding many big chances at all. They don't face a lot of big chances during games at all, and even so, that makes their defensive record very good. And especially with their favourable fixture run at the start of the season, I don't see there really being another keeper option to go for other than Robert Sanchez, and he's definitely not going to be changing in my team. And he's also going to be a set and forget in that I'm just going to play him every week and keep a 4.0 keeper like Ben Foster on the bench.
Yeah, and Robert Sanchez is definitely going to start for Brighton as well. Obviously Ryan is on the move, and he's basically solidified his spot in goals. So he's a lock in. You'll get from him. He won't get a clean sheet every single game, but he will provide the goods for me, and I hope he can get a few clean sheets on the way, which would be amazing. Another guy, which move on to defence just now, is Luke Shaw, and for me, he was one of my lock-ins in the knockout round of the Euro 2020 Fantasy League. Really grabbed my full team and just pulled it over that line. Got me in top 10 for most of the leagues that I was in. And I just can't look past him. To be honest, at 5.5 million, I think it's an absolute bargain. Obviously he got 10 clean sheets last year. Hopefully, if Rafa Varane comes in, United will be looking a wee bit more, solid at the back. But I mean, elsewhere, Maguire, I just don't understand why you go with anyone else in the defence, in the Man United defence at the moment over Luke Shaw. And I do want one of them in because they do have quite an easy run of games. I'm trying to look at kind of the first 6 games, and then I'll go from that moment of time and start chopping and changing my team. Obviously, it's Leeds, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle, West Ham, and Aston Villa. So, I mean, I'm looking at that just now, mate. I'm expecting, at least 3 clean sheets from those games.
Yeah. And I'm a United fan as well. And for sure, I think Shaw is the most favourable out of that United defence, even if Varane comes in. I think that only does good things for United in terms of clean sheets moving forward. I think Shaw, in terms of looking at his points last season, he was very underperforming in terms of fantasy returns. He was getting forward that left-hand side a lot down there with Rashford. He was having a lot of favour. Obviously, Rashford might now be out for a couple of months with the surgery he's just undergoing. But with United bringing in the likes of Jadon Sancho, Greenwood being fit, Cavani and Bruno up there, I think that only does wonders in terms of attacking returns. And I think it doesn't really make a difference to Shaw. He's on set pieces, he's on set corners a lot of the time. Some of the free kicks from further out where Bruno doesn't favour them, Luke Shaw will be having and whipping in where it's favouring a left footer. And I think it definitely, we've seen Luke Shaw's quality in terms of set pieces, especially on that England team, and the fact he's been getting forward a lot and having more favour down there for the England side. There's only good things for Luke Shaw, and 5.5 does seem like a very cheap price. Him and Digne, I think, are the 2 most favourable players at that kind of price point, depending on, kind of how Benitez comes in, whether he changes the system. Most likely it will be a back 5 with Digne playing at left wing back and perhaps Dumfries on the other side if he comes into Everton as well. But Luke Shaw, I really do like him, and predicted points back him up. 22.5 for the first 6 game weeks, which is only bettered by Wan-Bissaka, who's at the same exact number, which is very interesting, I thought. Obviously, with Luke Shaw coming back from England duty, there's a slight risk that, whether he'll be tired, fatigue. Hopefully he can have that pre-season to make sure that he's up and running. But as we know, Luke Shaw's a very resilient player, and ever since he's come back from that injury, he's been one of the most consistent performers in the whole of the Premier League, and certainly now is one of the top left-backs in the world. And so Shaw, for me, over Wan-Bissaka, just looks much better passing the eye test for sure, especially with those set pieces on his side. And I definitely back him being in pretty much every single FPL draft from here on out for me.
Yeah, I think he's much better, obviously, going forward than Aaron Wan-Bissaka. And, I've also taken into consideration Vladimir Kufal, who, was one of the players in this draft where I was thinking, should I go for him, should I not? And, my thought process was that, he's quite similar to Shaw in the sense that he loves to get forward. And, he actually got quite a good total points last season. And he's probably one of West Ham's better players. Obviously, by looking at that, he had 9 clean sheets, 9 assists, which is a good return for a fullback. And again, one of the main reasons that I went for him in my first draft, which possibly could change, especially Kufal, is the fact that they've got Newcastle, Leicester, Crystal Palace, Southampton, Man United, and Leeds. For me, I hope West Ham do well this year. They obviously finished the season off extremely well in the last season. However, I just think he's got that in him. I think the defence does too. Dawson's been very good. Cresswell's been finding for him. I think he could possibly grab a few clean sheets here, and he could possibly get a few assists. So that is my reasoning behind it. Obviously, I'm not an absolute expert behind it. However, from what I've seen of Vladimir Kufal, he has looked the real deal, and he's, I can't look past him at the $5 million price tag.
For sure, he seems very good value this year. I was expecting him to come in at 5.5, to be honest. So 5.0 still seemed like a very fair price, and that's kind of shown by 17.7% ownership. Obviously, nearly a fifth of the game owning Soufal, but he just passes the eye test tremendously. He's another one of those players who seems to be providing everything for those West Ham attackers, especially from open play. Of course, Cresswell did outperform Soufal in terms of FPL points last season. That's why he's come in 0.5 more. But a lot of that was down to set pieces, and of course, that is a part of the game. But I just prefer Soufal. It's just the player to watch. He looks fantastic. He provides a lot for whoever's playing up front for West Ham, if that's Antonio or not. And it is backed up by his stats and his performances. And like you said, they've got very favourable fixtures. You know, that United game is really the only proper challenge in terms of clean sheet potential, and the only time he dips under 3 projected points for that game. So no, I do really like Soufal, especially with West Ham, if they can continue their great form from the last season, picking up a few more clean sheets. And, you know, there were at points last season where I even doubled up with Soufal and Cresswell, but it does depend on who you want to go for. I think if they were at the same price, it would be much more of a headache. But for me, saving that 0.5 does seem the sensible option, and I really do like Vladimir as a pick.
Yeah, so I mean, one of my other spots in defence, I mean, I had to go with a Liverpool player. You know, I was actually possibly going to double up in defence for Liverpool players because they've got such an easy run of games, and you know, obviously they're one of the favourites going into the season. I decided to go with Andy Robertson. Yes, he is one of the more expensive options. However, you know what you're going to get with Andy Robertson. You know, obviously he didn't have an amazing season last year. However, it was still good. You know, obviously he had 12 clean sheets, 161 points overall. You know, he could possibly get even more this year coming. I mean, look at their games, mate. You know, it's Norwich, Burnley, Chelsea, Leeds, Crystal Palace, and Brentford.
Yeah.
Which for me is just an absolute no-brainer to have. You know, at least one Liverpool player in. If you're struggling with money, I would say, you know, go with Konate. I think he will play the majority of the games next to Virgil van Dijk. But obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson are going to provide the assists. And obviously they'll get clean sheet points as well. So I can't look past having at least one Liverpool defender in my team.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, I would suggest the majority of teams should have either a Trent or Robertson, if not both, in there. And of course, in midfield, we're obviously looking at using Liverpool picks up as there as well. Firmino's a no-go at striker, but Salah and Jota, even potentially Mane, if you wanted to take a very big risk in midfield and go against the grain in terms of ownership. And of course, Robertson at the back is owned less than Trent, 12.5% ownership. Does mean that he's coming in 5.5 cheaper as well. Trent, off the back of last season, still managed to get himself into last season's dream team, even with what people were arguably calling quite a poor campaign for the majority of it until the end, where he seemed to find some tremendous form. And that's what's kind of leaning me towards Trent. He's obviously had a full summer, although Robertson, you know, he didn't play for very long in the Euros. He'll be fully rested as well. But that's what makes me almost want to go for both Liverpool defenders and play a back four this season in FPL, which does seem very, very appealing, but it is hard to justify with such great value in other defenders. You know, we've already seen a few in Soufal and Shaw, even though they're what considered would be most mid-priced defenders. That are other players at value, you know, 4.5s in terms of Lamptey, even some other players who are flying under the radar. It is hard to justify going for the two premium picks, but definitely going for one of them. And I'm slightly edging towards Trent just in terms of having set pieces as well. The form he has was on the back of last season. If he hadn't found that form, it would be a much more tough decision for me. But for sure, going with Robertson or Trent, it's very hard to split them. And I think, you know, they could both be very similar in terms of points this season, and I think owners of either or maybe even both of them could be rewarded. In terms of going for Liverpool centre backs, I'm not especially convinced. I think I do want to see kind of how they'll be performing. Obviously, Konate is quite a lot cheaper, but if you're looking to save money, to be honest, I think probably going for a different defender in terms of some of the other options we've talked about, like fullbacks, would probably be the wise decision. And I think, to be honest, everyone should be finding funds elsewhere, and there are other positions you can downgrade and find better value if you're looking to try. And as I would recommend, get one of those Liverpool fullbacks into your side.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would love to get both them in it. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson in the defence. However, you know, I can't look past this guy, and I think Wesley Fofana is literally, he's the bargain of FPL this year. Obviously, I know he's a centre back. He'll be lucky to get, you know, any goal contributions, whatever. However, for 4.5 million, you know, I'm pretty sure they've got a decent run of fixtures at the start of the season. I can't look past them. I mean, it is hard on some teams. However, you know, obviously the 4.5 million price tag, and you know, he's obviously going to start every single game. With Ricardo Pereira coming back, you know, that obviously benefit Leicester. They seem to only perform in the 34 match days, and then they just drop off at the end. It's so strange what happens, but they always start off extremely well. So, I mean, I could possibly consider moving Wesley Fofana out for what you said, like a Tariq Lamptey type player, a Max Aaron, someone like that who will get more goal contributions. But yeah, I think Wesley Fofana could stay in my team. Obviously I'm not too sure. Whenever I just seen the price tag next to all the other Leicester players, I was like, how can I look past this guy?
Definitely. And I mean, for a top 6 defender, it just seems ridiculous that Fofana came in at that 4.5 price. I don't think we should overthink it in terms of him being in people's sides. He's an absolute bargain. He's an absolute steal, to consider the fact that Johnny Evans is at 5.5 just shows how valuable the Leicester defence is. And, he's not getting any younger. There's going to be almost 100% playtime for Fofana this season, I'd imagine. And in terms of attacking returns, I've looked into the stats and he's definitely underperforming there. I did watch quite a lot of Leicester games last season and he came very close from a number of set pieces on occasion after occasion. So he is very dominant in the air from corners and the likes of those. With Pereira and Castagna back, they look like they'll be the 2 starting wing backs and they are quite expensively priced, which does think that probably I would urge away and go for someone like a Shaw or Soufal. Other people, like we've talked about, even upgrading to the Liverpool defence because there does seem to be such great picks in defence this year, and we should probably all be edging towards having a strong back 5. There aren't very many cheap options below 4.5, so obviously a 4.0 would be the cheapest defender you can get. There aren't any playing options at that price point, so saving money at the back doesn't seem like too much of a wise option. Only Brandon Williams seems like the only option, and that would be granted if he gets a move away on loan. And so my opinion is to definitely pick some of these players, and having like a Fofana and a Lamptey or a Fofana and a Luke Ayling could be fantastic because in terms of rotation, they have fantastic fixture rotation in that you can have one of them in per week. So like you've got a back 4, and then if you say had Lamptey on the bench or Ayling on the bench, you can rotate him in, and they have fantastic. If you switch them week after week, you get a fantastic run of fixtures between them. So say you had like that back 3 of Shaw, Soufal and Robertson nailed, you can switch over that Fofana and Ayling or Fofana and Lamptey, and you can use lots of tools which have fixture rotation planners that are fantastic in terms of that. So yeah, they look like they've got really strong rotation with Leeds and Brighton. So if you're going to double up 2 4.5s, that seems like a very, very sensible way to go. And it can help you save quite a bit of cash moving into the midfield, for example, funding some of the players that I can see you've got in there already. So no, for sure, I really do like Fofana, and he's definitely one of the best 4.5 picks there is this year.
Yeah, so we can move on to the midfield then, obviously. We'll go on the bench after that. After the full team's finished, we can move on to my captain, which I can't look past. And yeah, obviously we went over the fixtures for Liverpool, and they're coming in with very, very easy fixtures for the first 6. I expect Salah to perform, bang the goals in. For me, 22 goals, 11 assists. Last season wasn't, the actual usual Salah, even though he had an absolutely amazing fantasy league. I think he actually could have played better. And, in these 6 games, Norwich, Burnley, Chelsea, Leeds, Crystal Palace and Brentford, which I have said before, if this guy doesn't score at least 3 or 4 goals, I'll be extremely surprised because, Norwich seem to kind of always be the whipping boys whenever they come up in the Premier League, which is very strange because they actually do have quite a good unit. Burnley, we know what Burnley are like. They defend and defend more. So I hope that will probably be quite a tough game. However, you go and look at Crystal Palace, they're kind of all over the place in the window at the moment. And then Brentford, 2 are just newly promoted. I just can't see past him. And yes, he is one of my more marquee players, 12.5 million price tag, but you definitely need these guys in your team. I hope that you agree with me on this one because I think it goes to show that 49.7% of people have actually picked him for their team. He's an absolute no-brainer for me, and even though, mate, you are the expert, I think it will still be very hard for you to persuade me to go elsewhere.
No, for sure, and I'm not going to try and attempt that in any way, shape, or form. Salah, I think he's projected the most points in the game for great reason. He's the main man at Liverpool. He's the talisman. He's on penalties. He's got everything going in his favour. And whatever price he was, to be honest, even at 13, I'd probably be bringing him in over Sadio Mane at least. For the majority of the season.
Yeah,
He
I just
seems to
think
be
Mane's too
setting.
expensive as
I
well.
think I think he is slightly overpriced, and he was in my overpriced players video. If he was 11.5, people would be thinking, "Oh, could he be a differential to go for if Salah just ends up not finding form?" But look, he's almost owned by half people in the game, and it's not. Those numbers don't lie. Those numbers are real, and they're real for very good reason. Fantastic fixtures, as we've already mentioned, and as we've already hit. And he's the projected top scorer in the game. And, there's not really much more to say apart from that. We don't need to talk about Salah for a long time because we know all the great reasons why he's the best FPL asset really out there, especially as he remains a midfielder this year. And yeah, he's definitely going to be my captain for game week 1 as well.
Yeah, we all know exactly what Salah can do. I mean, obviously it hurts me. I'm a Man United fan.
Yeah.
I need to put him as my captain, and I need to put one of my favourite players as my vice captain. But Bruno Fernandes, we know exactly what he can do for United. They had quite a rough Euro 2020. He didn't get anywhere near my team throughout the full tournament. Obviously it was kind of an early exit for them. However, he's just different in the Premier League for United, which I cannot complain, and I cannot see past having anyone else, than having Salah in my team. They are my lock-ins. If I had to choose them, obviously it's 12 million price tag, which I think's great. I thought he'd be 13 million, to be honest, after the season he had. Obviously 18 goals, 14 assists. What more do I need to say? And with Man United's fixtures as well, which we obviously went over with Luke Shaw, you have a very simple 6 first games, touch wood, obviously, because we were Man United, obviously, we could obviously lose some games. However, you would expect him to get some goal contributions throughout. Obviously, Leeds, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle, West Ham, and Aston Villa. I just can't see past it. And even past that game 6 mark, obviously we got a tough run of games in October.
Yeah.
So I'd probably look to maybe move him out at that point. However, he's in my plans for the time being.
Yeah, I completely agree. Especially for that first few fixtures, De Bruyne is a worse option in my opinion. I think Fernandes, at least for the start, I will be keeping him in. The thing that Bruno has as well is, let's not understate the value that penalties and free kicks are a part of the game, especially penalties. In Bruno's case, he never looks like missing at all. And United are great in terms of stats moving forward and they do win a lot. In terms of refereeing this season, we're not sure if they're going to take, a page out of the Euros book and leave it a bit and almost seem like VAR's not there. Of course, it seemed much more apparent in the Premier League last season, and there were a lot more calls that were being changed and looked at in close proximity. I'm not sure whether our personal opinions aside, I don't really see the refereeing changing too much in the Premier season. That could only favour Bruno Fernandes in terms of his penalties and stuff. But just from open play as well, everything seems to come through him, all the creativity at the moment. Obviously, with Sancho coming in, hopefully he can provide a bit as well. But with Cavani up front, still playing quite a lot of the games as well, he's a very clinical man, and I can see him putting away more and more of the chances that Bruno creates this season, especially off the back of the opening fixtures. Maybe you'll move him on. Maybe I can move him on to someone around that price a bit later on, but I certainly want 2 big hitters in midfield. Whether I move to De Bruyne if he hits better form could be something we see. But personally, I prefer both of those over Mane and Sterling, who are the other 2 really around that price who they seem like they have similar projected points. But I'll be going with Bruno from the start, and I'm glad that my statistics and research back up what my gut feeling as a United fan says about him.
Yeah, so the next midfielder that I've got is Diogo Jota, who, for me, performed amazing for Liverpool last year and quite a team, that were struggling. I think it baffles me the fact that there's only 11.9% owned. And the reason why I brought him in is, one, because obviously the fixtures, which we went over several times now about Liverpool. And and this is obviously my third Liverpool player that's in it in my final, and it's the price tag. 7.5 million for a player who could start up front for Liverpool, because Bobby Firmino, we know he's been underperforming for years now. He's pretty much a fraud. He's struggling, and Diogo Jota will probably start up front. I'm not obviously 100% sure on that, but I think as a midfielder, I think it would be crazy for you not to pick a player like Diogo Jota, who has got the possibility of starting up front next to Mane and Mohamed Salah. Obviously, he got 86 points total last season, but we also need to remember he was out injured for a while. He was fighting fitness before the Euros, but he managed to have quite a successful time personally in the Euros. I had him in my fantasy team in the group stage, got me a good number of points. And yeah, I just think for that price tag for a starting player in the top six, who's going to score the goals, I can't look past that. And I keep saying this, it's going to be hard for me to actually make changes to this draft. Obviously, we'll get a good view of if there's any injuries, if there's any incomings of players that will take over the roles of certain players that are in my team. However, I just think Diogo Jota is going to definitely be in Jurgen Klopp's plans for the upcoming season, and he'll play most games and get a large number of minutes under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, once again, Liverpool will go in probably with Jota definitely in that front three. We've even seen them play four of the attackers at time, with Firmino and Jota both partnering up with Salah and Mane at times last season. Personally, I think Jota's more in favour, and there's good reason for it. His statistics per 90 on the pitch are some of the best in the league, and he's just proven what a fantastic player he is. I mean, at 8.5, he was priced in the Euros, and he still managed to return tremendous value. So at 7.5 this season, I was pretty shocked to see him come in at that price. And it does certainly cause a headache for people as to which three Liverpool players you want to go with, because there's obviously, as we've mentioned, two fantastic defensive options in their fullbacks, Salah as well, who seems nailed on in every team. And so it really is a choice between having Diogo Jota or having a double up in defence. And I can certainly see the argument for having Jota in midfield, especially when there's other players around that price who don't seem to be playing for, as big teams, are not going to score as many goals as Liverpool. There aren't any other players really around 7.5 who are valuable options. You'd have to really downgrade or upgrade, find the cash to go to Grealish, downgrade to someone like a Buendia, Rafinha. They're all 6.5. So at 7.5, he seems the only real option, and a very, very under-owned player in my opinion. 7.5, as I meant, it's just an absolute steal. Just an absolute steal, and I'm surprised he's only owned at 11+% or whatever it is. Diogo Jota, I think, just passes the eye test as well, with great potential. He's always looking to get forward. He always wants to score. He's taking a lot of shots. Even in the Euros, we saw how kind of selfish he could be, and that's obviously not a great thing for Portugal. Ronaldo is getting a bit frustrated at him at times, but it clearly shows how confident he is and how much he wants to score, that he's taking shots instead of passing to one of the best players of all time. And so, yeah, I think Diogo Jota just all goes in his favour in terms of FPL, and the fact he's listed as a midfielder at 7.5 just seems like an absolute steal, and I definitely want to try and find a way to get him into my team as well without having to sacrifice too much elsewhere or give up any of the other players I want.
Yeah, I think he's just absolutely crazy that he's actually a midfielder. I expect him to go in as a striker this year, obviously, because he's basically been taking Firmino's role, and obviously Firmino as a striker in the game. I think it's just madness, the price tag that he's got on him, and he'll be playing, right next to Salah and Mane. So yeah, I'm really happy to have him in my team. 7.5 million. Obviously, the running games are great as well. And I've actually went for 3 Aston Villa players in my full squad, and the next guy is Jack Grealish, who is just an absolute magician. He's a great player. I mean, this last season he got 6 goals and 12 assists, which is just an amazing record for a player who plays for Aston Villa. No disrespect, but obviously they're not the top level. However, they're off to quite an easy start in the opening few games, and obviously they've got Watford, Newcastle, and Brentford, and then they've got Chelsea, Everton, and Man United. However, I think he can get a lot of goal contributions in those games. And, it's not to write him off against the top teams either, because, obviously I can remember him scoring against United, outside the box, an absolutely amazing goal. He's got it in him, and he's a set piece taker as well. So, the big guys can come up from the back like Tyrone Mings, and, Ezra Konsa, the big guys who could possibly get a goal from that. So yeah, I'm backing Jack Grealish. I think that's probably one of my, ones that I was kind of tossing up between him or Heung-min Son. Going to possibly downgrade somewhere else, get him in. I'll need to think about that near the time. Obviously, I've got a while to decide. However, yeah, I just think Jack Grealish kind of brings something different. And I say that 37% of people own him. So it's not really. However, I just think, it's a bit more of a gamble compared to going for, let's say, like a player like Heung-min Son, who will probably be very consistent throughout the season, like always.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Kind of two players you raised there are both kind of dependent on how this transfer window goes. Obviously, Grealish, if he moves away from Villa, that could make him less of a favourable option. If he goes to Man City, he may suffer from Pep roulette, Pep rotation, which would obviously make him worse of an FPL asset, despite being in a better team. Son, of course, if he loses Kane at Spurs, does make him a worse option as well. Son looks fantastic paired up there with him. He plays much more advanced than Kane at a lot of times during matches. And in fact, he's listed as a midfielder at 10.5. I think he's just slightly overpriced. I would love to get 3 big hitters in, but I'm going to prioritize, the likes of Salah and Bruno ahead of him. I think you just need to spread the value throughout your team. It's hard to get all the players you want in who are, kind of mid-priced with 3 big hitters, especially in your midfield, if you're going for one of those Liverpool defenders or even 2 at the back. And, in terms of Grealish, I do think he looks great. And, there's a lot of reason for him to be 37% owned. I think he's slightly over-owned, to be honest, based on kind of the hype around him at the Euros, coming off the bench and whatnot. A lot of people thinking he should have been starting, and there was good reason for that. Yeah, you mentioned that goal he scored against Man United. I was there for that game, so that goal scarred into my head. But what a finish it was. He just kind of got that flair and quality about him that means that he can produce kind of things from anywhere. With Buendia coming in, obviously a lot of people are looking at having 2 or even 3 Aston Villa options, as yourself have got. And a lot of people I've seen even having 3 attackers in Buendia, Grealish and Watkins. And it's very hard to pick who you want to go for. There's even Target in defence, who seems like not too bad of an option at 5.0 alongside Soufal. Grealish, would he be getting into my team? I'm not sure if at 8 million I'm going to be going for him. If he was on penalties, that may be something different, but we know Watkins has got those. It's quite hard, but if I want to go for a double up on Villa, I'm slightly edging towards Buendia and Watkins, to be honest. We're yet to see kind of in pre-season whether it looks like Buendia is going to be starting in that front 3, because there is obviously a slight element of doubt around there with Traore breathing down all 3 of their necks. Yeah. And obviously it would be Buendia who falls out of the front 3 in replace. But yeah, I think no matter what, if Grealish stays at Villa, they have a fantastic forward line and they look like they're going to go and perform particularly well, especially in those first 3 games. If people are looking to deploy the early wildcard around game week 3 or some time around there, that some people find very popular and a normal decision that I take myself quite a lot of the time. Having those Villa players in for those first 3 games seems set and forget. And, depending on how the form goes, you could either keep them in on wildcard or just keep one of them, or indeed take all 3 of them out. So I really do think it's a good option. And with other teams who've got great fixtures, such as Liverpool, United, Everton, you've got Calvert-Lewin in there, who we'll be onto in a minute. But there's players with those teams that have fixtures that are so great that you don't need to worry about taking them out, really, and they're almost set and forget options, so there shouldn't really be a problem in terms of having those transfers available to take out these players when their fixtures somewhat drop if they're looking a bit out of form.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things I was planning on doing is possibly getting to game week 6 and then calling my wild card up. So, I think possibly at least Grealish could maybe see that through. And what we just spoke about, obviously, he still provides an amazing threat against the top 6, teams in the league. However, possibly Watkins, I could go for someone better, either differ, because I'm just going to go for Watkins just now when we went to Calvert-Lewin. At 7.5 million, I don't know. I'm not too confident on Ollie Watkins. Obviously, he got 168 points last season, which was very good. 14 goals, 9 assists. Had a very good personal season for Aston Villa. However, I do believe, I think he'll come back and bite me. I don't think he'll manage to score against, these kind of teams below. I think we'll see more players like Jack Grealish, like kind of clutch players for these teams starting to score. So that is kind of one of my reasons why I think I could possibly, differ. I could go with maybe Mikel Antonio, and obviously there'll be guys coming in as well. I don't know if you've possibly got any other options that I could bring in over Ollie Watkins. I mean, I'm very happy with a lot of my team. However, I'm willing to kind of obviously, make a few changes to get possibly the money up. I do believe players like Jamie Vardy are just a bit too expensive for me.
Yeah,
but kind of players around about this price tag.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that this is the best price tag to go for this year. This kind of 6.5 to 8 million range in forwards just seems like the best. Kane, although we know how great he is, just seems too far out of budget at 12.5 million. It's a lot of money. 5 million to upgrade one player. It just seems ridiculous. In terms of the options around that price, as you mentioned, players like Vardy and Firmino are too much. They shouldn't be options anyway. They shouldn't be that highly priced themselves. There's obviously Iheanacho at Leicester who could potentially come into size. How will Daka coming in at Leicester affect that is we're yet to see. But Iheanacho, if he can continue his great form from last year and grab as many of the goals, Vardy was assisting him more than the other way round. So he seems to be kind of the goal scorer when they both play up front. Barnes is coming back as well. So still yet to see a bit how that will, if anything, will be changed or whether Iheanacho still plays up front with Vardy. And to be honest, I think that I can't really see that changing. I think it was working so well for them that they're going to stick with it. Watkins, I think, for those first three fixtures seems fantastic. Of course, quite ironic that he scored a hat-trick last season against Liverpool, wasn't it? They're one of those big teams, but we're looking to take him out for those games. That was kind of a fluke game, wasn't it, really, though, if we're being serious. Watkins, Newcastle and Brentford are three of probably the best fixtures you can possibly have. And so you've got great justification for having Watkins in your team. I definitely would. And he's in my team at the moment. And you've got one of the other options around that price in already, so I don't need to talk about him. But Calvert-Lewin, who'll be on to a minute, I think is one of the other best options at that price, and having one or at least both of them seem great. Antonio's another one you mentioned who I do really like. He was seen limping, I think, yesterday, which was something to look at, just double check on his injury status. But he should probably be back and fit for the season, hopefully. And if he is, then that does make him a great option. Obviously, you got Soufal as well, so I suppose that it's almost kind of looking at a double up, just because of how attacking Soufal is. We do got to kind of mention that midfielders aren't the only players that can get attacking returns. Defenders can do that as well, and assist the forwards too. Other players around that price, other people talk about Callum Wilson. I think Callum Wilson's a kind of wait and see player for me. I'm not going to go for him from the start, but I can see there's great justification for why he looks so promising. I mean, he's obviously the main man at Newcastle, and when he gets into form, he's a really fantastic player. There was just a period last season where he just seemed to score every week, and it was like kind of a nailed-on thing that Wilson goal was just inevitably coming in your Twitter timeline. And then the only other player really who is a bit cheaper is Ivan Toney, who's coming up from the Championship. Obviously, I'm not really a big fan of going for players who are recently promoted. That's kind of why, again, it sounds boring and sounds like a broken record, but wait and see is probably going to be my tactic in regards to him. He's very highly owned as well. I think he's the most highly owned forward. Ivan Toney around 35-36%, which does seem ridiculous.
So risky for a guy who's just been promoted. I think he will get goals. However, I think I'd rather stick with one of the guys like Ollie Watkins.
Yeah, and proven themselves.
You're obviously allowed transfers per week. And, I could maybe even possibly look at Ollie Watkins and think, maybe I could use him, get him out, and then possibly bring in Ivan Toney. I mean, I've not really looked in depth into Brentford's games. No, I can't click on it from here.
Yeah.
And, possibly if they have, decent games between, game week 4 to game week 6, I could possibly even bring him in at that point. However, I just feel slightly uncomfortable riding with Ollie Watkins between game week 4 to game week 6. Because obviously, as I said, I'm using a wild card at that stage. So yeah, I think that could possibly change. But one guy who's pretty much nailed on for me as well at the 8 million price tag. I think it's madness that he's still at this price tag. I thought he would actually possibly be 9 million, or maybe even 8.5. However, obviously we know how well he played last season. He was great. Dominic Calvert-Lewin with 16 goals, 6 assists, which was his best season ever at Everton. He looks as if he's only going to improve though, which is great to see. I'm so chuffed with their opening games as well. As I said, I'm going with the opening 6 games: Southampton, Leeds, Brighton, Burnley, Aston Villa, and Norwich. Myself looking at that just now, it makes me want to put in a defender from Everton too, because I can't see where the goals are coming from for most of these teams. Possibly, Aston Villa and Leeds. But obviously with Southampton, there's a lot of uncertainty in the club just now about Danny Ings. And then we've obviously got Norwich, Burnley and Brighton. They don't score many goals. So I think I could possibly maybe add in an Everton defender with that as well. But for me, Dominic Calvert-Lewin should score a good amount of goals. I believe Rafa Benitez, this will be one of his talisman, it will be one of his key guys to go forward in this full season. As you've obviously said, he is a nail on for me, and I'm guessing he's the exact same for you. I think it's crazy, obviously the fact he's only owned by 28.4%. The FPL, and I just can't go over it because he had such a good season last year. Everyone knew that he was one of the go-tos in the fantasy league. But yeah, I'm happy that he's got this price tag, and I do believe that people will start kind of flocking to him whenever he starts to get the few goals against Southampton, Leeds, and Brighton. We'll possibly see the ownership going up at that point.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, we've brushed over most of the strikers that are available around his price point. There aren't really any who are more expensive that are viable options. And Calvert-Lewin with those fun run of fixtures. When Brighton's the best defence you're playing in your first 6 fixtures, it's a good run of fixtures. And his projected points do back that up in terms of looking at those. He seems like he's going to return a lot. And he's one of those strikers who, even without penalties, almost seems like a no-brainer to put in. He's a proper number 9, as we kind of mentioned, and he plays up front, and he's the goal scorer. He's the goal scorer, and he plays like a traditional number 9 should, and could have easily favoured England. I'm sure if he came on and scored a few goals in the Euros, he'd be even higher owned. It's amazing that Watkins and Tony are higher owned to me. But no, I had him, towards the start of last season when he got that hat-trick early on. That was fantastic. And I'm going to stay loyal to him and back him again because I really do like him. And as you've said, doubling up on Everton with a defender does seem very viable, especially with Digne around that kind of just affordable price. If Dumfries comes in as well, that looks like it could be rumoured to happen. Dumfries and Digne playing at wing backs in a Rafa Benitez side just looks almost like a triple up could be on the cards for me. It's so hard to pick between all of the kind of plethora of defenders coming in right now. But sure, we'll jump onto the bench and quickly go over these players. Obviously, a couple of them are kind of placeholders, but there's an interesting defender who you've got on there that I want to talk about.
Yeah, so obviously, we won't take a lot of time going over this. Obviously I've got Ward as my keeper who won't get many minutes. He's at the 4 million mark. I've kind of just got him in there because I know Robert Sanchez has got obviously the easy run of fixtures in the first 6, well, easy-ish run of fixtures, and I expect him to start every game. So I'm not too fussed about the possibly going for a 4.5 million keeper. I'm happy with Ward. It probably won't be used. I'm just going to quickly move on to Winks. I think he's probably one of the most viable options at that price tag. Yes, he won't get many points. However, for me, it's just kind of one of those things where, again, 4.5 million for a midfielder who will possibly start for Spurs. I could use him. I say that I probably want to end up using him. And it goes for Obafemi as well. He's just kind of in there because he's 4.5 million. And I mean, he just didn't do anything last year, so I'm not expecting much. But yeah, the one player who I'm looking to, swap in and out is Matty Cash. And, this could differ because there's a lot of players who fit this price tag, 4.5 million to 5 million. possibly Matty Cash, as you said, Luke Ayling. But I'm just trying to think how much Luke Dean is, because I'd absolutely love to have a guy like that in. I think he's 5 million, 5.5. I can't exactly remember.
So he's 5.5.
5.5. So yeah, I could possibly, try and get rid of Matty Cash, bring in Luke Dean, and then put Fofana on the bench. I think that would probably be the best option for me. But yeah, I kind of want to have that rotation possible on my bench with the defender, because I'm deciding to stick with it. I'm going to go with 4 at the back, and I'm going to use the fifth defender to my advantage. I mean, I could even have a player like Max Arms in as well, who loves to get forward. Him and Tariq Lamptey, those guys will create a lot of chances for their team. So yeah, I mean, overall, mate, what do you think about my draft? And if you could round it up, what would you rate it out of 10? Because obviously this is a first draft. I'm not expecting it to be perfect. I'm ready to make some changes. However, yeah, I mean, I'd probably rate it at a 7 at the moment, because there is still room for improvement, and obviously we're very far away from the start of the season.
Yeah, I was going to say around 7, probably an 8, to be honest. I really do like it. Cash, I think, is probably an underlooked option, and I think he's a great player. It's hard to like say going for, but there's great defenders at 4.5. Not just Lamptey. There's players like kind of Ayling we talked about. Aït-Nouri of Wolves also looks like he could be a decent option if he can nail down that left back spot with Johnny coming back, of course. But no, I've really enjoyed it. I really like it. I think, to be honest, a bit where you could, if you want to go for a different 4.5, there's players like Brownhill and Gibbs White of Wolves. I think I'd probably favour them slightly over Harry Winks, just to kind of goal threat off the bench, attacking returns off the bench. I think there are probably a few better players. You don't have any money in the bank, do you?
No, I don't.
Right, so yeah, you do obviously have to find 0.5 to upgrade Cash.
So yeah, I'm kind of just need to get rid of Matty Cash. Probably I'll bring in a 4.5. Yeah. So I'll have that 0.5 million to spend elsewhere. I mean, I could possibly even upgrade to a 5 million midfielder off the bench as well. That could possibly be looked at.
Yeah.
Because I'm still not exactly sold Ollie Watkins. I think I'll probably get rid of him at match day 3 and bring in someone else, possibly. I'll closely watch Ivan Toney. I could possibly even go with 5 in midfield. I'll just see how it goes as the time goes. But anyway, mate, it was great having you on. You're more than welcome to come back on. Obviously, I know you're a Man United fan.
Yeah, sure.
So you're more than welcome to come on any previews, match reviews. Obviously, we're looking in depth into the transfer series as well, which will be live. At the weekend, and Ahmed will be going during the week. I've got a few journalists coming on, which I hope it goes well. And we get some in depth details about possibly Rafa Varane. But yeah, thanks very much, mate. And guys, if you haven't already, it'd be great if you could follow us on the socials and like and subscribe on YouTube. So thanks, Eddie, for coming on, and we hope to see you again.
Been a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much.